Hi, and welcome to RecoverED, a podcast from the Magdalen House, a recovery community for alcoholism. We're a 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, lovingly known by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we drop a new episode from one of our 3 podcast series. In RecoverED, we share education for the community on alcoholism, our programs, and resources for alcoholics and their loved ones. In each episode, you will get to know more about the disease of alcoholism and the solution. I'm your host, Laura Wilson, a recovered alcoholic and the communications manager here at Maggie's. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening. Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of RecoverED. Today, we will be talking about Step 4, and I have Norman Underwood here today. So, Norman, welcome.
Hi, welcome.
So, Norman, I know that you did not go through our first step or next step, but you have been volunteering here for a very long time. I know you do birthday nights. You're around the men's house a lot. So how did you get connected to the Magdalen House first and foremost?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I got connected right when I moved to Dallas. My friend Cooper was working at the men's house, and I reached out and said, I'm in a new city. I don't have a strong network. What can I do to get involved? And he invited me over, and I think the first day we cleaned out the fridges together. Good service. And I sat in a few meetings, and I signed up to volunteer. And, the book describes in A Vision for You being out there on the firing lines. And, Maggie's became for me the firing lines. It's where I could go and be of service and useful and, meet the men who, are beginning their journey. And once I felt that sense of community and just love and purpose, it was easy. So I've stuck around.
So briefly describe what happened in your life that brought you to working Step 4.
Nothing good. I've been to about 10 treatment centers, and I know the ins and out of a bunch of psych wards, and I know what a concrete floor of a jail cell feels like. That didn't get me to Step 4. What got me to Step 4 was I finally had a first step experience, and a man sat down with me and explained to me the nature of my disease. And he used a really cool visual that I had never seen before, and all that learning I had about addiction. He showed me a stick man and illustrated to me, the physical allergy, the mental obsession, and spiritual malady. And it mapped onto why I was in so much pain and why I had failed so much. And that was the beginning of my Step 1 experience, that I truly was powerless over alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. And then we did a little more work, and I felt really screwed. And we explained, we had a lot of conversations about what do you do in a hopeless situation, a hopeless state of mind and body. And he presented his experience with the steps and of how he didn't understand them. He didn't really grasp the idea of God when he did them. And he had years and years of sobriety and a happy family life and friends, and just seemed to not be the train wreck of a human being that he described in a story. And I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, okay, my life sucks, and I seem to be incapable of doing this. If I ask this higher power and do the work the same way that my sponsor did, maybe it'll work for me too. And to the natural progression from 1 to 3, and that's what they do here at the Magdalen House, is see the nature of the problem, why you need outside help, and ask you that straightforward question: are you willing to do the work to get yourself there? Are you willing to turn your life over to the care of God as you understand Him? And the easiest way to demonstrate that willingness and start the process is a 4th step. And so that's what I did. I just got a notebook and started it.
Awesome. For someone who's brand new, what is Step 4, and how does the book explain it in simple terms?
Right. So Step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. in a practical level, that's 3 inventories. One on resentment, so everyone you've ever had strong negative feelings for, and you answer some series of questions that are outlined in the book about those persons. A sex inventory, which is all the persons you've had intimate relationships or intimate feelings about in your life. And then lastly, your fear inventory, which is the fears that are the main drivers of your resentments. As it was explained to me, that is not the summation of a human life. We have lots of feelings and thoughts and interesting stories, but you pretty much capture the major defects and life experiences of a person if you look at what made them angry, what they really wanted, and what they're afraid of. And that was the portrait of myself that the inventory gave me, and I think that's the portrait most people get, are those 3 inventories. So that's it, 3 inventories that your sponsor will explain to you the specific questions in the book.
Why is the 4th step so important?
Step 1 gave me a glimpse of myself. I knew that I was an alcoholic based on looking at the cycle of relapse over and over again. And you're like, okay, I say I want to do this. It doesn't happen. I say I don't want to drink. I say I want a job. I say I want a house. I say I want a partner. All these things. I have all these plans. And then for some odd reason, my brain just doesn't do them, and I end up drunk every time. I mean, decades. But what one only gave me was that I was powerless over alcohol, and that my life was unmanageable in terms of drinking. That I seemed incapable of living life without drinking. What the 4th step does is explains the nature of that unmanageability. For me, I got to see, a person that selfish, that, vengeful, that petty. I mean, I did some really petty things to people, particularly to family members and boyfriends. And when I looked at that person who's just at war with the universe and is every slight he takes personally, there was no way he was not going to be pissed off. And if there was no way he wasn't going to be pissed off or agitated or frustrated, there was no way he wasn't going to drink. So it made actually step 1 make way more sense, because this is why my life is unmanageable. Me. I am the problem, and I can see my personality is so defective. There's no way that guy with all these defects can stay sober. And that is incredibly valuable information for anyone who's dying of alcoholism.
Right. I think there's a misunderstanding, at least I misunderstood when I first started coming in the rooms and before I actually worked the steps and got recovered this time, that when the second half of step 1, when it says, and our life became unmanageable, I thought my life was unmanageable because I couldn't keep a roof over my head. I couldn't keep any sort of relationships, couldn't keep a job, I just could not function as a, or adult, to use the word. I was so bad at adulting. So in reality, it sounds like this unmanageability is, first of all, you can't manage to stay stopped. Right. Can't manage to stop drinking. But the unmanageability almost sounds like, I don't want to say a personality trait, but like it says in the bedevilments, we were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't be of real use. I don't know where I'm going with this question.
No, I know. I think other alcoholics like myself know exactly where you're going. Where this, it talks about in the doctor's opinion that sense of ease and comfort you get after a few drinks, mm-hmm. that you see others taking with impunity. That whatever's baked into the batter of me, the stuff that is Norman, where it came from, I don't know. I don't care. Childhood, genetics, doesn't matter. Like my alcoholism, I'm just this weird product. And some of those traits are maladaptive, and they are, frankly, on full flight from reality at times. Like, I can hear the craziness in my head. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like a well guy. And I know all that goes away. My body knows it goes away. My mind knows it goes away with a few drinks. And that's a terrifying place to be. Like, I have these characteristics that are built into my personality, to my essence, soul, whatever you want to call it, my gestalt, or something cool and German sounding. But like, that's just who I am. And I don't know how to stop drinking any more than I know how to change my personality. I just don't. Those are like really big tasks. I did not walk away from my 4th step and said, man, that Norman's not that bad of a guy, and a few tweaks are going to fix him. I was even more convinced of why I needed a higher power and why I needed a program, because my defects were so glaring and so much more because I had never taken an honest look at my life. That's all. It says in the book that nothing counts but thoroughness and honesty. And my version of myself not only was distorted and delusional, it was snippets. Mm-hmm. It was just snippets. I was like, well, I was pretty good here. I was a pretty good husband here. And that totality of the 4th step of like you and another person going through your whole life, no holds bar, and getting a full picture of yourself. I do believe you feel like when you finally confess that, in your 5th step, that you are walking hand in hand with your Creator. You get that. I believe that feeling is real. And I believe anyone that does a thorough 4th and 5th step will get that. But if you walked away from a 4th step and said, man, I'm pretty good, I don't know, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Sounds like you maybe weren't that honest, if that's how you're feeling.
No, yeah. And I don't drink for any other reason than I have a physical allergy to alcohol. As the book says, people drink because they like the effects produced. Men and women drink, essentially. That's why people drink. That's why I drink. I don't have to have a really great traumatic backstory to drink. I can just drink because it's Tuesday.
Right.
But when I did my inventory, it did make sense. It's like, oh yeah, who would want to remember any of that? Who would want to look at themselves in the mirror with those type of actions, with that type of fear driving your life, particularly the fear inventory? And like, yeah, what person wouldn't need a drink if they're walking around in that much terror of the universe? Again, that's the type of blessing that a 4th step does. And, I've, made it a little bit sound like it's this giant, massive task where you get to see these deep insights, and you do get insights, but the questions weren't rocket science.
Right.
Like, they weren't. And which was the amazing thing is they were really straightforward questions of who were the people you were pissed off at from childhood forward, and what did you do to them in response? And those simple questions I had never considered.
Step 4 the inventories can seem extremely intimidating.
Right.
And 1, 2, and 3, they're always, I've always heard it as thinking steps. And exactly like you just said, we drink because we like the effect produced by it. When I am uncomfortable, I will drink. It started with social anxiety. It started with, not wanting to deal with the grief of losing a loved one. But what is more uncomfortable, taking this action to be free of this mental obsession. And for me, it was, I wanted other people's happiness. The recovered people that were coming in and talking to us, it wasn't their sobriety that I wanted. I mean, yes, I did want it, but it was the happiness and contentment they had towards life. And so step 4, I think, can sound very intimidating, but I was super excited to write down all of the people that I was resentful at. When you're writing the reasoning, like why, like you just said, why we're mad, do you write an entire novel in this little section?
So, I had an evolution in my writing of inventory that the first few pieces I started writing, I mean, they sounded like novels,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of reasoning, and a lot of adverbs to be like, mother for treating me so, not just poorly, but, like a bastard child, or, dad for, just, I was flexing my vocabulary. I wanted to, paint a whole picture, which I realized, the story was for me. And I do this to my sponsees. It drives them crazy when they offer me an excuse for why they didn't do something. I'll be like, hey, yes or no, did you do it? The story's for you. And I realized that the bare facts of inventory was I resented my mom for not parenting me the way I wanted to be parent, which is really that's columns 1, 2, and 3 if we were going to get technical here. Like what I didn't like, she didn't parent the way I wanted. Why? I didn't get what I want. It made me feel less than or something. And I started off really these novels, and by the end of the process, by when I was like writing the last few pieces, it was straightforward what they did to me, how I felt less than or greater than. I didn't need to say like use some fancy term to describe my. It was just I felt bad, I felt more, I felt less than, I felt sad. Because the story was just addressing to the real feelings, which was, I don't like when I feel bad, sad, or angry.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't need a lot of work, and that's a liberating thing. Because, people think of that they're getting a grade on an inventory. At least I've heard that from sponsees, and I was convinced I was going to get an A. But all I said, like, how did it, what did you want from the situation? What did you expect? Did you feel less than? Did you feel greater than? Did you feel small? Did you feel tall? Did you feel weak? The third column asks us to look at, our feelings. And then the fourth column just asks us really straightforward what we did. And again, these are really straightforward questions that are outlined in the book that a sponsor will guide you through. But it's like, why were you mad? How did it make you feel? What did you do in retaliation?
Right.
And that's like Legos. They're really small. It's really simple building blocks. And without the story, that's just you. Because there's no justification. There's just, person did something I didn't like. I did something in response.
Right.
And it usually, for me, they were never on par. Someone said something small or did something small to me, and I held on to it, and I nursed that wound, and I doubled down how I was going to get them. And again, the simple questions I could have considered theoretically on my own for years. I could have taken stock of my moral inventory for years. Like, I have a brain. God gave me a brain to use. It's sometimes useful as a tool. It got me degrees and jobs. But the idea of taking the time to actually look at my behavior with like a logical, clear mind. One, I was too drunk to do it. Two, why would I want to do that unless I thought I was dying and this was the only way to save myself? And that's why I did it. 1, 2, and 3 made 4 very easy.
So we identify what we're angry at and how it hurt us and how we're affected by it. Why does it matter that we're trying to find our part in it? Like, what's the point of finding our part in it?
Well, one, the book says we try to disregard the other person entirely. And at some point in this program, I don't need to really know the reason why. My sponsor told me to do it. But, one of the things that helped me get over that question was, what do I have to see my part in it? My sponsor just said, hey, where do you see your part in the book? It says my mistakes. I don't care what the other person did. I don't sponsor them. I sponsor you. And the information, the assessment of the inventory process is for you. Now, that was easy enough for me to comprehend. It's like, okay, I just have to say, yeah, it was probably a mistake. I'll offer like a small like anecdote. I had a lot of hostility and resentment towards my mom, a lot of negative feelings about how I thought she interacted with me. If she listens to this, I've already made amends for what I'm about to say. As an adult, like a 30-something adult, I would use the Comcast Xfinity app to change the channel or put the TV into Spanish when I lived in a different state when I was annoyed at her, particularly during college basketball games. She loves March Madness. Mm. I mean, I could have all the stories in the world about what she did to me or why she's a good mom or a bad mom or whatever, but man, I mean, when you put that, it's just my mistakes in it. Like, what type of person is sitting around as an adult putting the game into, German subtitles so my mom can understand a basketball game?
Yeah. I don't really feel like there's a lot to understand with a basketball game word-wise.
That is true. That is true. So, I mean, I think college basketball has a lot of nuance, but but still, I mean, that's changing the channel. I mean, that's petty.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, her part in the situation, because it's hard. A lot of sponsees will come with real. Let me be very clear, with real harms. There are true harms in this world that people do to each other. I believe that, particularly harms of a traumatic nature that are violent and cruel. And there is no part in that. I don't have a part in that. People who have childhood sexual trauma do not have a part in that. That is not my part. There might be my mistake in it. And my mistake has nothing to do with the original resentment. It has to do with what I did with my feelings. A sober, mature person can be harmed and still behave in a way that aligns with spiritual principles.
Right.
The mistakes that I do are when there is a more mature, more spiritual, kinder way to do something. And in my resentment, I behave a certain way. Because that is the thing we don't, I believe, talk enough about in AA sometimes in the rooms. Like, how do we talk maturely about real harms and traumas out there, social injustices, things like that, and say that we're not concerned about your part in it. We're concerned about how you show up afterwards. How are you living with mistakes on a daily basis? And what story are you using to justify your continued behavior? And that's it. I think that's, again, because the inventory is for me. Now, I will say my sponsor apparently is a liar because all those were really important, because all those mistakes I wrote down, when I got to step 8, he's like, okay, you write those down on a piece of paper.
Right. It's not necessarily, obviously it's not our fault when something traumatic, like you just said, happens to us. But, if that's something that we're using to drink over, that's my part in it. And it's, we move through all this resentment and then we get to fear. And fear, I've always heard, is just, it's a lack of faith. It's a spiritual immaturity. Going through these fears, saying it's a lack of faith, how long did it take for you? Like, how do we see what our part is when we have these fears? Is it just because we're not trusting God, or?
My level of faith when I started this program was so small. I mean, it was, mustard seed is generous. Mm-hmm. So it was difficult for me to grasp fear inventory in terms of a lack of faith. I mean, it was enough for me to muster the faith to even talk to my sponsor. I mean, that's how bitter and sad I was, and that I was okay, it worked for this guy, and I'm just gonna try. That was about as much as I could muster at the time. But that line where it said, "Wasn't it because self-reliance had failed?" Now that I'm arrogant and egotistical and convinced of my own natural abilities enough that made sense. So I was like, oh, I have failed. I have a failure of a life. My life was failing. It was actively failing in front of me, from my health to my bank account, to my legal status, to my family relationships. Everything was failing. All the bedevilments, everything was there. And I had that evidence, and that 1 and 2 and 3 made that clear. 4 doubled down, and I got to fear when that had that sentence, hadn't self-reliance failed. Because I was powerless. My life was unmanageable. And when I got to the fear inventory, it wasn't because I was drinking. I hadn't been drinking for a while by that point. And all those fears and a lot of those things that were on my inventory happened when I was sober. Life was no more controllable sober than it was drunk. My part of being in fear was, of course, as the book says, it's the chief activator of all our character defects, fear. I'm walking around in a universe that if I believe only in self-reliance, means I have to make you like me. I have to affect my own success in life. I have to make sure that I eat healthy enough that I don't get cancer, that I stay in shape enough to be physically fit at 90, that I can be in shape enough and drive the right car enough to get the nice guy, and so on and so on. It was so much control. And what I knew, sort of like I'd always known, that I was an alcoholic. I'd had enough family exposure, and I had seen like my early foibles and screw-ups while drunk, and I was like, oh, I may have a problem with this. And I was like, nah, we'll deal with that later. Most of us do that. Yeah. But what I had also suspected, I think a lot of people suspect about life, alcoholics and non-alcoholics, is that we don't most often get what we want.
Right.
Life is hard, and the truth is we are going to die. We're going to lose loved ones. We're going to have poverty. We're going to get diseases. We're going to have, as the book says, the hard times that are sure to come. We're all going to have them. Fear is a part of our lives. And what I had for my part and how I managed fear was 2 things. 1, bullying the universe into giving me what I wanted. I'm afraid of being alone. Well, I'm going to affect not being alone because I'm going to hit on any guy that would possibly go home with me. I'm going to trick him into a relationship with me, and I'm going to be incredibly unfaithful because I'm so worried he's going to leave me. I'm going to get the next one. And I'm going to basically railroad my way through my career because I need to make money, and I'm so afraid you're going to get the job over me that I'm going to make sure that I get it over you. I'm going to build a repertoire and a resume and a litany of friends and all this army of things, these details that can prove to you I'm good enough, I deserve more, I'm in control. And when that didn't work, I had the answer, which was, let's just go to the bar. My mistake in handling fear was I just doubled down on self-reliance. And that's exactly how I approached sobriety for years. That what I thought was to get sober, because I was beginning to become afraid of dying an alcoholic death, my answer was, well, I'm going to work harder at the program. And by that I mean I'm going to just self-will myself into recovery. I'm going to self-will myself into the gym. I'm going to self-will myself into building the life that I want. And I wasn't going to listen to anyone or have faith in anyone that they could have the answers. And it didn't work. And so when I finally did like the full inventory and then the full steps, pretty much if my sponsor had told me, hey, you need to go cover yourself in peanut butter and walk down the highway to stay sober, I probably would have done it. I don't recommend that. That does not seem right. But that was it. That was the difference. Like, and you know, faith is that I came to believe that the people who worked this program, because I had met them and they seemed happy and joyous and free, they seemed to walk through life like they were just not without challenges, but like, oh, got fired. Okay, get a new job. I'll be okay. I have a God. And I borrowed their faith enough to be like, okay, fear, it exists. Cool.
Yeah, I related to so much of what you just said about fear. That was awesome. So now to the big, bad, scary sex inventory or harms inventory. I know there's a lot of misconception that you have to list out like every single person that you've had relations with. But luckily for us, the book does not tell us that. So what would you say to someone who's maybe hesitant or nervous about the sex inventory?
I mean, it just, by the time I had written my resentment inventory, it just really didn't matter. Because I was really willing. And, you know, because the steps are in order for a reason, and the book is in order for a reason. I know that everyone knows amends are coming if you're going to work the steps.
Right.
Same thing as if you've been around the rooms or heard things, you know the sex inventory is coming. But the resentment inventory is the bulk of it. That's the bulk of most people's. And most people aren't going to get through that.
Right.
You know, that's why, so my, suggestion to anyone is always like, just start with that. Just start with, I had a high school guidance counselor on there. I don't know why she needed to be on there, but in my head, I was like, you're the reason for everything that went wrong in my life. And once I had written all that and I saw these, like the pettiness and all that, sex inventory became somewhat just mechanical of like, right, these are the people that I had sexual romantic relationships with, which is all the book says, we reviewed our conduct. That's it. We reviewed our conduct, and my sponsor asked me to include things that were of a relationship. So the people I wanted to sleep with and didn't. Now, I didn't include like celebrities. That would be a little weird. But I included people I tried to date that really hurt my feelings when they rebuffed me. That was important because I became vindictive and I changed my behavior. But really, I just started a list of every childhood relationship forward, from the boy in middle school that didn't talk to me, all the way, to a whole swath of categories. I had a long sex inventory. I just put Grindr guys. I mean, that, dating app guys. I was like, how do I even begin to list or name them? I mean, I don't know who they are, to be honest. But the thing that was useful about the whole process was the questions are straightforward. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? That was it. Those were the things of like, there were plenty of people I did not have sex with, where jealousy, bitterness, suspicion, I never met a good friend's husband that I wasn't going to flirt with at a bar. Now, most of those, nothing came of them. And I'm sure they had plenty of feelings about me and,
right.
But like arousing jealousy, bitterness, suspicion, manipulating people, that was just, those are the same defects I used in my resentment inventory. They just had a charged energy around them. For me, because I had shame about sex. Our society tends to have shame about sex. But they were just the same dishonesty, manipulation, vindictiveness, selfishness, fear, all those things I did in the resentment inventory. And I believe that's why they're in order. That once you see that sex is not a particularly unique part of our lives, it is just a venue that, like, other aspects, our defects are at play in. But it's the one we usually don't want to talk about.
Right.
And that's the openness. Because, the only question I ever, that was asked of me whenever I got coy about wanting to answer a question to my sponsor or not write something down, who are you unwilling to discuss? What are you unwilling? The question he would say to me, and I posed to my sponsor, is, how free do you want to be?
Would you rather be right or would you rather be free?
Yeah, and that's it. Like, do you want to be a little free or a lot free? Because there were things on my sex inventory that, as a gay man, That's my particular experience in life. Like telling my straight sponsor some of the things on there, the amount of shame and predictive fear. I was like, he's going to judge me. He's going to see me as like a vile, or he's going to whatever, all the story in my head. When I had the faith to feel like, hey, all the instructions say is just own the feelings I felt and tell the things I did to one other person who is supposed to be understanding and without judgment. There are clear instructions on the 5th step for sponsors about like tight-lipped, non-judgmental. When I trusted that he was going to do that, and I just went for it and said, okay, here's all the stuff. He had some things that he shared with me, but mostly he's like, okay, that's going to go on a card. And that's just it. Or why'd you do that? And it was so calm and easygoing. And, the virtue of, 5th step, not 4th, is like courage, right?
Right.
So the idea is like, when I got that courage and faith to like tell another man things that I would never tell anyone, I was so ashamed of, and he still loved me and didn't judge me. And it wasn't that big of a deal. It diminished the size of the secret. All of them. I had courage after that point. I could tell more secrets. I could be more open. So that's why I said the sex inventory is, every sponsor has a slightly different variant, and whatever instructions you're given, you do. But by the time I got to it, I was like, okay, this is just another list. Because frankly, I didn't have the emotional sobriety, maturity. I mean, I was convinced I was a sociopath. I just was incapable of approaching the inventory process 4 and then 5 from anything but a baseline, like, intellectual level. And I don't mean like rocket science. I mean like, give me a question, I'll give you an answer. Give me a question, I'll give you an answer.
Right.
The idea of connecting what I did on that paper to like a feeling in my stomach, that came over time. That came in the 5th step process. And that really came with the amends process and years of sobriety now, where I can look back at my resentments and feel like, man, neither of my parents are in good health right now. And, I'm sure I wrote an inventory on them, and I put down all the things I had done to them. But at the time, it was just like, yeah, I stole that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, that's true. Fine, I'll be honest. And the same thing with my sex inventory. Like, I did like, oh, yeah, I cheated on you, or yeah, I did that. But years now, looking back at my behavior and how a sober person would react and how I reacted then, and I was like, man, that was really terrible.
Yeah.
Like, man, that is really something that, and I've made amends. We're great, but I look at it with such an emotional weight now that I was incapable of it at the time, because the spiritual awakening, as it says in step 12, is as a result of these steps. No one is asking you to become the Buddha because you wrote an inventory. It's asking you to write down on a piece of paper your life story and share it. And the sex inventory is just one part of that. So it's not daunting. And most people, most sober people, I think look back on it as a fond experience.
Yeah. This has been so educational, hopefully for our listeners. And, I truly thank you for being so open and vulnerable and explaining all of this. I know I've related a lot to what you have said today. If there's somebody listening to this who is either struggling to start their 4th step or maybe feels intimidated by it, what would you let them know listening to this?
First things first, it's all it says is just, we put this on paper. You get a notebook and you just start writing. There is no grade. There is no grade. And even then, there's a format. All of us have been given some type of format with sponsor instructions, and they'll give you that. But I screwed up mine. I mean, everyone you start it. And for me, I was so pent up and so much pain and closed off and didn't realize it. I didn't realize that my self-centeredness had driven me to basically the only person I talked to was me. Mm. And occasionally I entertained other people. But really all the conversation was in my head. And when I let that out on paper and then invited another person in, the world was lifted. So do you want to be in more pain? How much pain do you want? Go get a notebook and just, seek directions on how to write the format. But, if it were rocket science, I don't believe in a universe or a God or a cosmic order that says we all have to be, Einsteins and, Charles Dickens or William Shakespeare's to write inventory. We have to it just says start a piece of paper and write it down. And if you do that, your life will change. At least I believe it will.
Yeah. Sounds like it did for you.
It did.
Yeah. What would you want somebody listening to this to know about the Magdalen House?
Most importantly, that there is a place for everyone on the spectrum of consequences. Because, it's like the Magdalen House is a place that offers support and love and resources through the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous for everyone who's struggling with this disease, whether they're so-called low bottoms or high bottom drunks, whether or not they think they fit an ideal client. These places, the 12 Steps and the Magdalen House are available for everyone. And the number one filter that most of us stops us from going to treatment is I'm not like them, or they won't help me, or I'm not their ideal candidate. They don't reach out. And it is for everyone. I mean, this program is for everyone. And if the only person who says no, you shouldn't go or you shouldn't reach out is undoubtedly you. And that was my experience. I was determined to talk myself out of reaching out for help because for me, I just did what an alcoholic wanted to do. I wanted to drink.
Right.
I wanted a solution without having to ask for help. And that doesn't work very often.
What does your life look like today?
Oh, it's, I would love to say it's all rainbows and gray, but it's magical. I go to the same job that I've had for my entire time in Dallas. I have coworkers that seem to enjoy me. I don't miss work. I haven't been arrested. I have friends. I have a lot of friends, and I have a lot of friends. I have friends in the program and in other fellowships, not just AA. I have friends that are just normal folks that just go out and have a beer, and I'm amazed by them. I see my family. I get to show up, but mostly I get to sponsor, and I get to share the message in places like the Magdalen House, and I do a couple other H&Is. My home group is delighted that I'm chairing this quarter, so I don't get to share. I just get to point on people to be called. They don't have to hear me ramble. But no, my life it's just simple and good, and it's all because of the 12 steps. Like, I have a relationship with friends, family, and a God of my understanding because someone handed me a book, the same book I had been handed in every treatment before. And for once, I read it and I discussed it with him as if I actually believed it could work. And it did. And I'm, for that, eternally grateful.
I love that. Is there anything else that you want to say that we haven't covered or talked about, or just any last nuggets of wisdom?
I don't think so, other than I hope that no one judges me too much for interfering with my mom's college basketball watching schedule.
That made me laugh, as I'm sure it will make others laugh. And I very much enjoy March Madness because I went to the University of Kansas. So.
Oh, you're a Jayhawk?
I am a Jayhawk.
I'm a Blue Devil.
No. Oh, we gotta trash this whole podcast.
Even worse, I dated a Jayhawk once. I was actually temporarily engaged to him. I don't really remember proposing, but I was engaged.
I love it. Norman, thank you so much. I mean, this has been fabulous. And again, I just thank you for your vulnerability and openness, and hopefully this will really help someone who's listening.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to RecoverED. If this episode has offered hope, clarity, or comfort to you, please consider making a donation to the Magdalen House. By paying it forward, you help make sure the next alcoholic gets the same chance, completely free. You can give anytime at magdalenhouse.org. We release new episodes every first and third Wednesday, so be sure to tune in. Want to learn more or stay connected? Visit magdalenhouse.org or find us on social by searching The Magdalen House. The Magdalen House is a privately funded 501c3 nonprofit in Dallas, Texas, and every program we offer is possible because people like you choose to give. Thank you for helping us change and save lives.